Welcome, everyone, to today's teaching. It is titled Building Blocks of the Biblical Calendar, a systematic approach to the topic of the biblical calendar. There are two disclaimers that need to be mentioned. Not everything on the topic of the biblical calendar has been included, just the basics, plus some thought starters. This study uses both the English and Hebrew names for God, Elohim, the Lord, Yahuwah, and Jesus, Yahusha. This will help new people by using terms they're familiar with and open up other discussions about Hebrew names in the future. This study has been created as a resource tool. It is intended to help guide you in your study. These summary pages contain the topics included in this study and review questions for each section. Taking a screenshot of the next 2 pages or referring to the printed copy of the PDF will be helpful. This will allow you to follow along step by step. We will be starting with several introduction questions, then move into the individual building blocks: the day, the year, and the month, and conclude with an overview of the biblical calendar. The slide numbers have been included for easy reference. Let's get started. The first question we need to consider is, who can benefit from this study? How about people who like to approach a topic step by step? Or people coming from a Christian background and just starting to learn about the biblical calendar? Or people who are unfamiliar with Hebrew definitions and names for people found in the Bible? Or people who have a genuine interest to investigate the biblical calendar? It is also important to ask the question, why even study the biblical calendar? This will help to define the motivation and purpose of your study. When believers realize that the whole Bible contains instructions that pertain to them, specifically the observance of the weekly Sabbath and the annual feasts, the next step is to determine how to do this. To find the answer to this question is not easy, but will require going on a journey. Hebrews 11:6 tells us, now without faith it is impossible to please Elohim, since the one who draws near to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. For believers who want to obey the instructions of the Father, determining the biblical calendar has important practical implications. We are running out of time as end times are beginning to play out. We desperately need the Father's intervention to know the times. If we are looking for Messiah's return and the fulfilling of the fall feasts, this will only happen on one calendar. Remember how Yahusha rebuked Israel for not knowing the time of their visitation? Bringing up the topic of the biblical calendar often causes controversy and division. Why is this? Well, some are tired of having arguments versus discussions on this topic. Some are comfortable with their current understanding and not interested in studying something different. Some are not aware of the outside influence of traditions of men and inherited lies. Some have incomplete information regarding context, original language word definitions, mistranslations, or translator bias. Some are just tired of searching out tons of information through YouTube videos, etc. But have you ever considered who benefits from this divide? We need to intentionally be on the lookout for and influence of the adversary. We know his intent is to steal, kill, and destroy. He is the father of lies and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. The adversary has declared his intent to try to be like the Most High. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of Elohim. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation. On the farthest sides of the north, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. The adversary intends to change times and laws. Daniel 7:25 says, He shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and laws. We are going to have a study about a calendar. It would be helpful to ask, what is the definition of a calendar? A calendar is a system of reckoning time in which the beginning, length, and divisions are defined. Step 1. Determine what are the divisions or building blocks of the biblical calendar. 2. Determine when each building block begins. 3. Determine how long of a time period does each building block cover. Once we find the answers to these when and how long questions, it should clarify the timing and observance of the weekly Sabbath, the timing and observance of the annual feasts, and to help us recognize the established pattern in other scripture narratives, enhancing our understanding of different passages. Now that we know the general definition of a calendar, we also need to ask what determines what criteria is needed to be a biblical calendar. Can we agree that the source of a biblical calendar, by definition, would be the scriptures themselves? This would include the Torah instructions, the prophets, the writings, the New Testament, and the witness of the life of Yahusha, who is the Word. He is the author of the creation calendar. Where do we get our authority regarding the biblical calendar? Yahusha himself tells us to follow the words of Moses. How might historic evidence, other writings, outside influence, and religious tradition impact our understanding of the topic of a biblical calendar? Are they a distraction from finding the truth? And finally, if a calendar fails the determined criteria, should it be in question or maybe even dismissed? Finally, we need to determine what are the divisions or building blocks of the biblical calendar. The building blocks are the day, the year, and the month. We will be looking at these building blocks in the order they are first introduced in the Torah, our instruction manual. Moses, inspired by the Spirit of Elohim, was able to record and reveal many details regarding the order of events. With an understanding of the context and definitions, these carefully chosen words give insight into what Moses was communicating. It is the glory of Elohim to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings is to search out a matter. At the end of each section, there will be some review questions, which have been included to test your understanding. You are encouraged to either stop the video now and answer the questions, or come back to these questions at the end of the presentation. The first building block of the biblical calendar is the day. We will be looking at the day in depth, as it is not only the first building block mentioned in Scripture, but it is foundational to understanding the entire biblical calendar. The study of the building block today will include the following: a review of the context of Genesis 1:1-5, a review of the original word language definitions. 3, we need to determine and define the divisions of the day. We need to review the order of the divisions of the day. We need to review the beginning and the length of the day. And we need to recognize the established pattern of the day in other scripture passages. We will start with a review of the context of Genesis 1:1-5. In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Who was present at the beginning? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. He, Yahusha, was with Elohim in the beginning. Through him all things were made, and without him nothing was made. What characteristics were present at the beginning? Elohim is light, and there is no darkness in him. Therefore Yahusha spoke to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall by no means walk in darkness, but possess the light of life. This Elohim, his way is perfect. The word of Yahuwah proves true. And the earth came to be formless and empty. The word was, translated in English, has a definition of become, come to pass. It is a transition word indicating that something is different than what came before it. Before, the characteristics of the heavens and the earth were perfect, true, and full of the light of Elohim. Isaiah 45:18 tells us, For Yahuwah is Elohim, and he created the heavens and the earth and put everything in place. Who did not create it to be formless, who formed it to be inhabited. I am Yahuwah, and there is no other. After, what was formed to be inhabited was now formless, empty, and full of confusion and waste. We learn the condition of the earth from the Hebrew definitions of the words used, tohu and bohu. The earth described in Genesis 1:1 is very different than the earth described in Genesis 1:2. And darkness was on the face of the deep. This darkness was the first to be recorded. This Hebrew word is not the same word used to describe the time period we know as night, or the darkness when the stars can be seen. This darkness, Hoshek, was one of obscurity and misery, a primitive root to be dark, as withholding light. Be black, cause darkness. Be dim, hide. The Hoshek darkness was a heavy veil between the light of Elohim, in verse 1, and the earth. The earth was covered by this obscure, thick darkness. And the spirit of Elohim was moving on the face of the waters. The Hebrew definitions tell us that moving means shake, move, flutter, or hover. Face is the surface, and waters are defined as water, water of feet, or urine. Do the definitions describing these waters indicate characteristics that would support life? The vibration from the spirit of Elohim moving produced a cleansing effect on the contaminated waters. For deeper study, investigate sonoluminescence. You will learn that vibration on water causes light and cleansing. And Elohim said, Let light come to be, and light came to be. And Elohim saw the light, that it was good, and Elohim separated the light from the darkness. With the spoken declaration of let light come to be, Elohim restored the light found in verse 1. That Hoshek darkness from verse 2 needed cleansing, which happened when the Spirit of Elohim moved over the contaminated waters. And Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. This is the first time the word night, Lael, is used. It is the darkness that we are familiar with that happens after the sun goes down and the stars begin to appear. We have not understood that the first darkness, Hoshek, mentioned in Genesis 1:2, has a different meaning than the darkness of night, Lael. This has caused much confusion. There was no darkness of night in the beginning. Only the light of Elohim was present. That Hoshek darkness that was introduced was the heavy veil between the light of Elohim and the earth. When light was restored, in verse 3, it penetrated and cleansed that Hoshek darkness, the heavy veil. And Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. With this spoken declaration, Elohim established the covenant with the day and night, as described in Jeremiah 33. These verses indicate that Elohim himself states that the time periods of day and night have an appointed schedule. It is Elohim who put into place the prescribed tasks of heaven and earth. Do you think we should pay attention to his appointed schedule? And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, one day. Remember, the word was is a transition word, indicating that something is different from what came before it. So we need to determine what came before evening, and we need to determine what came before morning. Moses carefully chose the words used to communicate and clearly reveal the order of events of the first day of creation. A closer look at the original definitions of these words will bring further understanding. Review questions. Either stop the video now or come back to these questions at the end of the presentation. We will now review the original language word definitions of some key words found in Genesis 1:5. Light or day, yom, darkness, hoshek, night, lael, evening, areb, morning, boker, and one, echad. Light, or a definition of light of day, light of heavenly luminaries, daybreak, dawn, morning light, with a primitive root, to be or become light, to shine. Day, yom. It can mean day, time, or year. Day as opposed to night. A day, which is a 24-hour period, as defined by evening and morning in Genesis 1, as a division of time, meaning to be hot, as the warm hours. Day, yom, can indicate approximately 12 or 24 hours. Day, yom, can include both day and night. Darkness, hoshek, is darkness, obscurity, misery, with a primitive root, to be or become dark, grow dim, be darkened, be black, be hidden. Night, lael, darkness, night as opposed to day. Total absence of light, or for us today, the total absence of the influence of sunlight. Evening, areb, dusk, mixing or a blending, to become darkened, to intermix. Its primitive root, to become evening, grow dark, to grow dusky at sundown. Morning, boker, dawn, as the break of day. Morning, day, early, morning, morrow. The break of day, the end of night, the coming of daylight, coming of sunrise, beginning of day. Its primitive root, properly to plow or break forth. Just like a plow divides the ground, morning marks the division between the end of the darkness of night and the beginning and influence of light. And one, echad, unified, one, first. Review questions. Stop the video now or come back to these questions at the end of the presentation. Now that we have reviewed the original language word definitions, let's look at the common understanding of these words and determine and define the divisions of the building block, the day. And Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, one day. There are 4 divisions that make up the one first echad, unified time period. These divisions are day, night, evening, morning. We know this to be a 24-hour time period. The day is light, or for us today, actual direct sunlight when the sun is above the horizon until it falls below the horizon. Night is darkness, or what we now know as night. It is the absence of the influence of sunlight. Evening, the dusk twilight, or the time period between sunset and night. It is a mixture of light being overtaken by darkness. Morning, it is the dawn twilight, or the period that divides the end of the darkness of night and the beginning and influence of light. The sky begins to grow light, but the sun is not yet visible above the horizon. It is a mixture of darkness being overtaken by light. Review questions. Either stop the video now or come back to these questions at the end of the presentation. Next, we will determine the order of these divisions. Remember Jeremiah 33:20 through 26? These verses indicated that Elohim made a covenant with the day and night. He states that these time periods, day and night, have an appointed schedule, and he has determined their order with his own statements. Day is followed by night. Evening and morning, both by definition, are time periods that include a mixture of light and darkness. We need to determine how these time periods, evening and morning, fit together to connect the day to the night. In order to fulfill the Hebrew definition of evening, areb, day, light, must be present first to create a mixture before the darkness appears. The evening cannot come and pass unless there is daylight first. In order to fulfill the Hebrew definition of morning, boker, the night darkness must be present in order to mark the division between the end of darkness and the beginning and influence of light, which happens at dawn. The morning cannot come and pass unless it follows a night first. A review of the events of the first day of creation. Light of the Creator was present in the beginning. The Hoshek darkness tried to destroy the plans of creation. Light was reestablished and called day. Evening came to be. It was the mixture of light being overcome by night darkness. The Hoshek darkness was cleansed and called night, Lael. No creation activity occurred during Lael darkness. Morning came to be. The dawn-light mixture overtook the Lael darkness. Note, the first day of creation did not start with a morning-dawn mixture. By definition, morning is a mixture of darkness and light. There was no darkness in the beginning, only light. Morning dawn divides and ends the previous 24-hour period of day 1. The morning dawn then begins the new 24-hour period of day 2. The established pattern for the rest of the creation week narrative, plus all future days, 24-hour periods. The morning dawn begins the new 24-hour period. Day, the work of creation took place in the light. Evening, dusk, the mixture of light being overcome by the night darkness. Night, no creation activity during the darkness. Morning, a mixture of darkness being overcome by the influence of dawn light. Dawn divides and ends the previous 24-hour period. As we follow the circle on the right, dawn begins at morning until sunrise. Day continues until sunset. Then sunset ends when there is no more influence of light and darkness begins. The night continues until the first influence of the dawn light. This light marks the division. The previous day ends and the new day begins. Review questions. Stop the video now or come back to these questions at the end of the presentation. Next, we need to review the beginning and the length of the building block, the day. Beginning. Every day begins with the first light in the dawn sky, called twilight. While the sunrise may be very close behind, the day does not begin with sunrise, but with light. Everything on day 1 of creation began with light. Length. The pattern established at creation, including the weekly Shabbat, has a full 24 hours. This includes morning twilight, the day light, the evening twilight, and then night. The following morning twilight is the end of the previous 24-hour period or day and the start of the new 24-hour period, the day. Sabbath. Every Sabbath, whether weekly or an annual Sabbath, has a full 24 hours for worship, praise, prayer, fellowship, and feasting. That means that the Shabbat begins at dawn on the Roman calendar Saturday and ends at dawn on the Roman calendar Sunday. It is Shabbat until the next dawn begins to illuminate the sky with light. Review questions. Either stop the video now or come back to these questions at the end of the presentation. Now that we have established the pattern for all future days, 24-hour periods, let's look at some scripture passages and see if we can recognize this pattern in these narratives. It is important to stop and read these passages on your own. Then review the highlighted sections. Elohim's covenant with Abram in Genesis 15, 1 through 18. Verse 1, Abram has a vision. Verse 9, the vision ends. Verse 10, Abram brought and prepared the animals. Verse 11, Abram drove away the birds. When do birds fly? The answer, during the daytime. Verse 12, as the sun was setting, Abram fell asleep. Verse 17, when sun had set, darkness had fallen. Verse 18, on that day, Yom, the 24-hour period, Yahuwah made a covenant with Abraham. All these events happened during the morning, day, evening, night pattern. The Passover instituted, Exodus 12, 6 through 11. Now you shall keep it, the lamb, until the 14th day of the same month. The congregation of Israel shall kill it at twilight, Ereb, and eat the flesh on that night. You shall let none of it remain until morning. It is Yahuwah's Passover. Numbers 33:3 confirms this pattern. They departed in the first month on the 15th day of the month. On the day after Passover, the children of Israel went out with boldness in the sight of all the Egyptians. Verse 4 tells us the Egyptians were burying all their firstborn. When were these firstborn killed? The previous night. Elohim's deliverance of the Israelites from Egypt in Exodus 14:9 through 31. The children of Israel lifted their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them. How were they able to see these Egyptians? Answer, it was daylight. Moses said to the people, see the salvation of Yahuwah, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians who you see today, you shall see again no more forever. So that the one did not come near to the other all that night. Verse 21, and Yahuwah caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night. Now it came to pass in the morning watch, and when the morning appeared, the sea returned to its full depth, while the Egyptians were fleeing into it. So Yahuwah saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians. All these events happened during one 24-hour morning, day, evening, night pattern. Moses gives instructions regarding the manna and Sabbath in Exodus 16:16 through 29. And they gathered it, the manna, every morning, and when the sun became hot during the day, it melted. And it came to be on the 6th day that they gathered twice as much bread. And Moses said to them, this is what Yahuwah has said, tomorrow is a rest, a Sabbath set apart to Yahuwah. Lay up for yourselves all that is left over, to keep it until the morning. And they laid it up until morning. And Moses said, eat it today, for today is the Sabbath to Yahuwah. Today you do not find it in the field. Gather it 6 days, but on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, there is none. Nehemiah building the wall, found in Nehemiah 4:21 and 22. So we labored in the work, and half of the men held the spears from daybreak until the stars appeared. Morning, daybreak, day, evening, night, the stars appeared. At the same time, I also said to the people, let each man and his servant stay at night in Jerusalem, that they may be our guard by night and a working party by day. We can see that Nehemiah is describing the established pattern found in Torah. In Nehemiah 13:19 and 22, the story of Nehemiah closing the gates. The context of this story involves Nehemiah returning to Jerusalem to find the people not following Torah, and Sabbath in particular. He needed to set them straight. So it was at the gates of Jerusalem, as it began to be dark, to be, become, or grow dark, or to shadow, before the Sabbath, that I commanded the gates to be shut, and charged that they must not be opened until after the Sabbath. The merchants lodged outside once or twice. That would have been 1 or 2 nights. We have already learned that there is no darkness until after sunset. In this verse, the evening mixture had begun. Evening was already present, and Sabbath had not yet come. Sabbath would not come until morning. All these events show the morning, day, evening, night pattern. Here are some examples of the established day pattern in the New Testament during the week of the crucifixion. Now, when evening had come, after sunset, because it was the preparation day, that is, the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea went into Pilate and asked for the body of Yahusha. Mark 1:32 tells us that evening was after sunset. This man, Joseph of Arimathea, went to Pilate after sunset and asked for the body of Yahusha. Then he took it down, wrapped it in linen, and laid it in a tomb that was hewn out of rock where no one had ever lain before. That day was the preparation, and the Sabbath drew near. Epiphosko is that definition, to grow light. The new day, the day after the preparation, had not yet come. The next day, the Sabbath, would begin at morning, when it would grow light at dawn. We see the same use of the word epiphosko in Matthew 28:1. Now after the Sabbath, as the first day of the week began to dawn, began to grow light. Finally, John gives us the narrative of the first day of the week after the death of Yahusha. Now the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb early morning. Then the same day at evening, being the first day of the week, Yahusha came and stood in their midst, and said to them, Peace be with you. Morning and evening were part of the same first day of the week. This pattern was true in both the biblical and Roman reckoning of the day. For the review of this section, not only is it important to stop and read these passages on your own, but it's important to practice explaining these passages to others to gain confidence and conviction. The next biblical building block is the year. It was mentioned earlier in this study that finding insights into the calendar would not always be straightforward, but would require going on a journey. We need to start to connect the dots for the building block, the year. Genesis 1:14-15, and Elohim said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of heavens to give light on the earth. And it was so. The first mention of this time period for the year is in connection to Elohim's declaring that there will be lights in the firmament to fulfill specific purposes, to divide the day from night, for signs and seasons, for days and years, to give light on the earth. Genesis 1:16-18, Elohim made 2 great lights, a greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Elohim set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth and to rule over the day and night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good. It is important to first identify these two lights and determine how they fulfill the specific purposes outlined. Review questions. Either stop the video now or come back to this review at the end of the presentation. Next, we need to see if the sun follows the prescribed job descriptions. It is usually agreed, and our observation suggests, that the greater light is the sun, to divide the day from the night, to separate, to give light on the earth, to be light, to shine, to rule over the day, dominion. The sun is only seen during the day. The light of the sun has dominion over the time period. To divide the light from the darkness. The influence of light from the sun during the morning, day, and evening divides these light periods from darkness. For signs and seasons, a distinguishing mark. Just like the rainbow was given as a sign with a covenant made with Noah, the sun is a tangible reminder of a divine agreement. The covenant with the day and the covenant with the night. Seasons, appointed place, appointed time. A primitive root to fix, appoint, assemble. The 24-hour daily pattern and the yearly repeating circuit help to determine the fixed times and appointments of agriculture and the appointed festivals. The sun has an important involvement in these times. For days, the sun is involved with the 24-hour pattern of the day. Without the light of the sun, both directly or by its influence, time would not happen. For years, a division of time as a measure of time, and the primitive root to repeat, do it again, and duplicate. The sun travels in a circuit through the starry constellations, ending at the same place each year. It is the sun that marks the end of the year. The Mazzaroth, the 12 constellations, provide the framework. So our results: the sun meets Elohim's prescribed job descriptions. And Scripture confirms, "Thus says Yahuwah, who gives the sun for light by day," found in Jeremiah 31:35. Review questions. Stop the video now or come back to this review at the end of the presentation. We need to continue to connect the dots for the building block, the year, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. When trying to determine what is the lesser light spoken of in this passage, there has been a lot of misunderstanding. Taking a closer look at the text will bring some clarification. Points for consideration. 1. He made is in italics and indicates that it was not in the original text, but added by the translator. 2. Keep in mind that Hebrew does not have punctuation marks. These have also been added by the translator. A more accurate translation would be, "And the lesser light to rule the night, the stars also." The also is used as in addition to the greater light. We need to test this information and see if stars follow the prescribed job descriptions. To divide the day from the night, to divide the light from the darkness. Remember the definition of night? Darkness, night as opposed to day. Total absence of light, or the absence of the influence of sunlight. The stars, which can only be seen at night, make the division between day and night. To rule over the night, to give light on the earth. Although the stars are present all the time, They can only be seen at night. Their light has dominion over this time period. For signs and seasons, for days and years. The Mazzaroth is one of the 4 components needed for the equinox shadow sign. The straight line cast from the equinox shadow signals the end of the year. The next day, at dawn, starts the calendar count for all yearly appointed times and festivals. Results: the stars meet Elohim's prescribed job descriptions. Scripture confirms, thus says Yahuwah, who gives the stars for light by night. Review questions. Stop the video now or come back to this review at the end of the presentation. But wait, I always thought that the moon was the lesser light. The following will give some clarification on this matter. Remember, when trying to determine what is the lesser light, there has been a lot of misunderstanding, including 1. The improper translation of Genesis 1:16. 2. Having a limited understanding of the definitions of signs and seasons. 3. Having limited understanding of Psalm 104:19. 4. Needing to test if the moon follows the prescribed job descriptions. Thus says Yahuwah, who gives the sun for light by day, the ordinances of the moon, and the stars for a light, singular, by night. The moon has an important purpose. It has been given ordinances, or prescribed tasks. These ordinances are to bless the earth and mankind with agricultural seasons for sowing and reaping. We can see that in Deuteronomy 33:14. He appointed the moon for seasons. The sun knows it's going down. That's Psalm 104:19. The context of this passage is all about creation and the things created on the earth. So what type of seasons is the moon appointed for? A deeper study of the use of seasons falls into 3 main categories. First is agricultural, fixed time or season, which is one of the ordinances of the moon. Second are worship statutes, but there are qualifiers present when indicating appointed times. And third, the birds have their appointed times of migration and breeding. Can be seen in Jeremiah 8:7. When the moon is used to appoint worship statutes, the festivals are never fixed. They can vary between 1 to 5 weeks depending on the arrival of the specific moon phase. The moon is not used to determine appointed worship statutes. To divide the light from the darkness, to rule over the day, to rule over the night, to divide the day from the night. The moon is oftentimes present during the day, as well as during the night. This part-time presence does not divide. The moon cannot have the role of ruling over the night when some nights it's not even present. Or to give light on the earth. We often see the moon in the day sky. Other times it is absent, and no light is seen in the day or night. For days and years, the moon has no influence on a 24-hour day pattern, or for the start of the year. The moon has already failed 7 out of 9 descriptive job tasks. The moon disqualifies itself as the lesser light. The results: the moon does not meet the standard of the prescribed job descriptions given by Elohim for being the lesser light. Scripture confirms that the moon was given a job description, that of ordinances. Review questions about the moon. Either stop the video now I'll come back to this review at the end of the presentation. Review of the beginning and length of the building block, the year. Beginning, we are to watch for the equinox sign or straight line shadow on the ground to determine the arrival of the last day of the year. This is what is referred to as the turning of the year. Moses knew when the year started. He knew the equinox calculation of those great pyramids in Egypt. This month shall be a beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. This is the time of greening, or Abib, when the land comes back to life. The next day, starting at dawn, is the first day of the 360-day festival calendar year. It is also the first day of the first month. The 4 components needed to produce an equinox include the Mazzaroth, the 12 constellations, the circuit of the sun, ending at the same place each year in the Mazzaroth. Light is needed to cast a shadow, and the earth is needed to receive the light and shadows. Length. There are 30 days in a month. There are 12 months in a year. There are 360 days in a year. Note, this is the Torah count for the festival calendar, not the current civil calendar. For the first 3,300 years from creation, Elohim's calendar was comprised of 360-day year. The flood was approximately 2000 BC. Following the footsteps of Moses from Egypt to Mount Sinai around 1500 BC, the calendar still had 30-day months, from Passover in the first month to the quail manna in the second month, to Pentecost in the third month. Around 700 BC, the yearly circuit length of the sun did change at Hezekiah's sundial miracle, which added 5+ days to 360 days, creating the civil calendar we have today. However, this did not change the length of the 360-day festal calendar that determines Elohim's appointed festivals. Until he changes the yearly circuit length of the sun back to 360 days, the extra days from count 361 to 365 or 366 are days that are waiting for the equinox sign or straight line shadow, which shows up on the last day of the year. Review questions. Stop the video now or come back to this review at the end of the presentation. Review questions continued. Remember, we were looking at the building blocks in the order they appear in Scripture. Our final building block is the month. The first time we find the term month used in Scripture, it is describing the narrative of Noah and the flood. From Genesis 7:11 through Genesis 9:4, we find this story. From the second month, the 17th day, to the 7th month on the 17th day equals a 5-month time period. The water was present for 150 days at the time the ark rested. 150 days divided by 5 equals 30 days in each month. How would Noah keep track of time during a 40-day rainstorm? Even during rain, when other lights in the sky are not visible, the day light and the night darkness are present. All Noah had to do was mark the repeat of these signs, the coming and going of light, and just count from 1 to 30. Review the beginning and length of the building block of the month. Beginning, the first day of the first month count begins the day after the equinox shadow sign. After that, do repeating counts of 1 to 30 to determine future months. Length. There are 30 days in each month. Gazing at the sun, moon, or stars for the purpose of worship or service is strictly forbidden by Moses in 2 commands found in Deuteronomy 4:19 and Deuteronomy 17:2-7. It is clear in Torah that following after or mixing with the customs of nations was forbidden. Determining the months in the biblical calendar does not involve gazing at the sun, moon, or stars. The biblical calendar month combines the authority of the shadow sign and learning to count. Psalm 90:12 tells us, "So teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom." Review questions for the month. Stop the video now or come back to this review at the end of the presentation. Overview of the biblical calendar. The biblical calendar simply involves looking for the light and learning to count. Look for the light to begin the day and watch for the equinox straight line shadow to know when to begin the year. Learn to count 1 to 30 for each month, 1 to 12 for 12 months of the year, and 1 to 360, counting each day in his calendar. The biblical calendar is full of specific instructions to count. For the first 3,300 years from creation, his calendar was comprised of a 360-day year. Timeline prophecies in Revelation, like the 1,260 days in Revelation 11, 12, and 13, are governed by the creation count, which is equal to 42 months of 30 days each, a 360-day year. By following the biblical 360-day calendar, we are in step with his ways as we await for the yearly circuit of the sun to return to the pattern as established at creation, a 360-day year. Elohim knows the end from the beginning. We also know that Elohim never changes. We have a lot to learn about the end from studying the beginning. Review questions. Stop the video now or come back to this review at the end of the presentation. Review questions. What was the first recorded day of the biblical calendar? Where is it recorded? What was the first recorded day of the 7-day pattern that leads us to the Sabbath? Where is it recorded? What was the first recorded day of the first year? Where is it recorded? What was the first recorded day of the first month? Where is it recorded? The answer? Genesis 1:5. This is the end of the presentation. If you have further questions, please contact the person who introduced you to this presentation. Thank you and shalom.